Commander Alana Mitchell and her crew aboard the Horizon are faced with an extraordinary anomaly. They observe an alien ship moving faster than light, its engines cold, with no detectable power source. As they engage with the unknown vessel, they realize that they are being drawn into a deadly game of cat and mouse, where the laws of physics no longer apply. In their pursuit for answers, the crew is forced to confront a terrifying truth. This ship isn't just a mystery, it's a weapon. The silence of space pressed against the hull of the Horizon, a deep, suffocating calm that mirrored the tension in the cockpit. Commander Alana Mitchell stood before the viewport, eyes scanning the distant stars. It had been an ordinary patrol until now, an uneventful task, one of many that her crew had completed with practiced ease. But what she saw before her now was anything but ordinary. A ship drifting in space with no propulsion systems visible, no engines firing. It didn't make sense. The Horizon's sensors were struggling to keep up with the anomaly, a massive vessel, easily 4 times the size of their ship, moving faster than light without any noticeable power source. "Captain!" Lieutenant Markson's voice broke the silence, his tone tight with disbelief. This ship, it's moving faster than light. But it's not using any fuel and its engines are cold. There's no way it should be moving at that speed." Mitchell didn't respond immediately. She studied the readings on her console, the data flashing on the screen, but failing to make sense of it. It was impossible. They had been charting unknown space for years, and nothing had ever been encountered that defied physics so completely. "I'm not getting any comms from them," Markson added, still staring at the readings in confusion. "It's as if they're not even there. But we can see them. We're getting a perfect visual scan." "Keep trying," Mitchell said sharply, stepping closer to the sensor panel. "I want to know everything about that ship. Why is it here? What's its purpose?" The Horizon's comms officer, Lieutenant Parker, worked furiously at her console. "Commander, I'm not getting anything," she said, her voice edged with frustration. "No signals, no response to our hails, nothing." Mitchell took a deep breath, her fingers brushing across the edge of the viewport. The alien ship's sleek metallic surface reflected the dim light from their own vessel. It was eerily still, no visible engines, no heat signatures. How was it moving so quickly, and why didn't it respond? "Any signs of life?" Mitchell asked, her mind racing. "Negative, Commander," Markson replied. "Life support systems are offline. It's like the ship is a shell, but it's not abandoned. Something is here." Mitchell's eyes narrowed. She knew something was off, but she couldn't put her finger on it. It was as if the laws of physics themselves were being defied right in front of her. She took a breath, trying to ground herself. "Commander, it's changing course," Parker suddenly said, her voice rising in alarm. "The ship, it's altering direction, and it's heading straight for us." "Lock all weapons," Mitchell ordered, her voice sharp. "Prepare for anything. Whatever it is, we need to be ready." But even as she said it, she knew that they were no match for whatever this ship was. They were outgunned, outclassed. The Horizon was a state-of-the-art exploration vessel, but it wasn't built to fight. And this ship, whatever it was, wasn't showing any signs of conventional behavior. The alien vessel continued its approach, moving faster than anything Mitchell had ever seen. Her heart began to race as she watched the distance between them shrink, their sensors failing to predict the ship's path. "Commander, Markson started, his voice trembling. The ship's engines, cold and silent, suddenly pulsed, emitting a deep, resonant vibration that rattled the hull of the Horizon. Mitchell held onto her chair as the vibrations intensified, sending waves of tension through the ship. The crew exchanged glances, all of them unsure of what was happening, and then the lights flickered twice before the ship lurched. "We're being pulled in," Markson hissed. "Their gravitational field, it's—" But before he could finish, the room fell into a sudden, suffocating silence. The force pulling them in was overwhelming. Mitchell slammed her hand on the console, but the horizon wasn't responding. They were being drawn toward the alien ship, their own systems helpless against the power it exuded. "Abort course!" Mitchell shouted, her voice strained. "Now!" But no command was heard. They were locked in. The alien ship moved closer, its surface shifting, its shape morphing as though it were alive. And in the reflection on the viewport, Mitchell saw something that made her stomach turn. It was watching them. As they drew closer, she saw something flicker on the edge of the alien ship's surface. A strange, translucent wave that rippled across its exterior. It was as though the ship was reacting to their presence, sensing their fear, studying them. And then the realization hit her, cold and sharp. They weren't just visitors, they were prey. "Brace for impact," Mitchell shouted, but the words were barely out of her mouth before the horizon lurched again. The lights went out completely, plunging them into darkness. And then they were no longer in control of the ship. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The lights flickered again, casting the bridge in a ghostly half-light as the horizon drifted uncontrollably toward the alien ship. The low hum of the ship's failing systems reverberated through the walls, amplifying the deep sense of helplessness that seemed to suffocate the crew. Commander Mitchell stood frozen at the viewport, her eyes locked on the dark, shifting mass outside. The ship that defied every law of physics they knew. "Steady, everyone," Mitchell said, though her voice faltered, betraying her own panic. She clutched the armrests of her chair, but it was no use. They were trapped. "Commander, we're being pulled in." Lieutenant Markson's voice came from behind her, full of disbelief. "The gravitational field around that thing, it's unlike anything I've seen. It's not a black hole, but it might as well be. Our systems are completely offline." Mitchell's heart skipped a beat. "I know, Lieutenant. I can feel it." She looked over to Rojas at the comms station. "Felix, any luck with communications? Maybe we can hail them." Rojas shook his head, his face tight with anxiety. "It's no use, Commander. Every attempt to communicate is being blocked. They're jamming our signals. We can't even get a basic distress call out." "Damn it," Mitchell muttered under her breath, her fingers tapping nervously on the console. She couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation settle on her. This wasn't just another anomaly in space. This wasn't just another unexplored region of the galaxy. This was something far beyond their comprehension, and it was happening too fast for them to react. The horizon shuddered again, the entire ship groaning as if something was crushing it from the outside. The power fluctuated. For a moment the lights went out completely, plunging them into total darkness. "Power's down!" Markson shouted, his voice strained with panic. "I've lost the thrusters. The navigation is down. We're being pulled, Commander. There's no escape." Mitchell clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. "Focus, Markson. We need to stay calm. Rojas, do you have anything we can use to break free?" "I'm trying, Commander, but the system's completely unresponsive," Rojas replied, his fingers flying over his console. "I can't even access the main engines. It's like we've been locked out." Mitchell's gaze moved back to the viewport, the alien ship looming closer, its surface shifting like liquid metal. It seemed to grow larger with every passing moment, as though it was adapting to their presence. She couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just observing it. They were being observed in turn. "Keep trying," Mitchell said through gritted teeth. She didn't know how much longer they could hold out. The Horizon was a sophisticated ship, a beacon of Terran engineering, but right now it felt more like a toy, at the mercy of something that didn't even need to touch them to render them powerless. "Commander," Markson's voice broke through the silence, his tone now tinged with fear. "There's something happening to the ship. The outer hull, it's warping. I can't get a proper scan of it, but the structural integrity is being compromised." "Do not let that ship touch us, Markson," Mitchell ordered, her voice cold with urgency. "We're not surrendering. Whatever this thing is, we fight." But even as she said it, Mitchell knew they were past that point. They weren't in a position to fight anything. They couldn't even move. The alien ship's Surface continued to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone, each pulse sending a wave of energy toward them. The air in the cockpit felt thick, charged with something she couldn't understand. It was as though the ship itself was alive and aware of them. And every movement it made seemed to have an effect on the horizon. Then the hum outside. The ship grew louder, its deep, resonant vibration now vibrating through the horizon's frame. It was like the ship was being pulled into something, as though a powerful, invisible force was drawing them in, and they couldn't escape. A sudden, sharp crack echoed from the hull, followed by a loud, rattling thud. The ship shuddered violently, throwing everyone off balance. The bridge lights flickered again, and the walls groaned under the strain. Mitchell's stomach churned. "Report!" she shouted. "We've lost containment on the forward shields," Markson said quickly, his voice shaking. "The ship's integrity is failing. The hull is—" Before he could finish, the ship was rocked again, and this time the crew felt it physically, a deep, wrenching jolt that felt like the very foundations of the ship were being torn apart. Mitchell barely had time to brace herself before the lights went out once more. In the dark, the hum outside became a full-throated roar, vibrating through their bones. The horizon wasn't just moving now, it was being dragged, pulled into something. It couldn't escape. "Commander!" Markson shouted, his voice now full of panic. "It's inside the ship, I can feel it. Something's on the hull." Mitchell's breath caught in her throat. Whatever the object was, it wasn't just manipulating the ship's systems anymore. It was inside the horizon, pulling them into its orbit with a force that no human technology could match. Through the viewport, she could see the ship in its full form now, towering in the void, its surface a fluid mass that seemed to bend reality itself. It wasn't just pulling them in physically, it was warping space around them, trapping them in a distorted reality. "Commander, we need to get out of here," Rojas said, his voice trembling. "We can't fight this. We're being controlled. It's toying with us." Mitchell's mind raced, but she knew they had no choice. They were trapped. The horizon was at the mercy of an intelligence that they couldn't even comprehend. There was no escape. There was no fight. And worse still, it was only a matter of time before whatever was out there decided they were no longer necessary. And then, just as the ship lurched again, throwing the crew back into their seats, Mitchell understood. The alien ship wasn't trying to destroy them, it was studying them. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The horizon groaned, its hull creaking under the unrelenting pressure. The alien ship outside seemed to grow larger with each passing moment, its form shifting, bending in ways that defied logic. The once steady hum of the horizon's systems had become a dissonant symphony of glitches and failures. Every pulse from the alien ship sent shockwaves through the hull, and the crew was caught in its gravitational web, unable to break free. "Commander, we've lost power to the starboard thrusters," Markson's voice came, thin with stress. We're completely adrift." Mitchell's eyes snapped to the monitor. Their trajectory was spiraling ever closer to the massive alien vessel, its presence filling the viewport like a dark shadow. The ship was moving faster than anything she'd ever seen, its engines cold, its structure defying the known laws of physics. And yet, despite its lack of visible propulsion, it was pulling them in, drawing them toward it like a moth to a flame. "Divert. All remaining power to the emergency thrusters," Mitchell commanded, her voice sharp with authority. "We have to break free. No more failures." But even as she spoke, she knew. There was no power left. The horizon was a sitting duck, unable to escape the pull of the unknown object. "We can't," Rojas said, his voice trembling as he stared at his console. "Every system is being overridden. It's like something's inside. Our systems controlling them. I can't stop it." Mitchell's stomach twisted. The cold realities settled over her like a suffocating weight. They were being manipulated. Every move they made, every attempt to regain control, only brought them closer to the alien ship. Whatever it wasn't just a ship. It was something else, something that was bending the very fabric of space and time around them. "Is there any way to reach Earth?" Mitchell asked, her voice strained. "No," Rojas replied, shaking his head. "The comms are completely blocked. Even our backup channels are being intercepted. We're cut off." Mitchell slammed her fist on the console in frustration. They had no way to call for help. They had no way to escape. The alien ship outside was closing in, its black mass filling the viewport, and soon they would be nothing more than another piece of debris in its wake. A strange, high-pitched hum suddenly filled the room, reverberating in their bones. It wasn't coming from their ship, but from outside. The noise was alien in its resonance, as if it were vibrating at a frequency beyond human perception. It grew louder and louder until it felt like the very air was shaking. "What the hell is that?" Grant shouted, her eyes wide in terror. She had moved to the viewport, her fingers gripping the frame as she stared at the alien vessel. It's communicating with us." Mitchell's heart pounded in her chest. They were no longer dealing with a ship. They were dealing with an intelligence, an entity that was fully aware of their presence, and it was toying with them. "I can't take much more of this," Markson said, his voice laced with desperation. "The ship it's breaking apart. We're being pulled into its orbit faster than we can keep up." Suddenly, the horizon lurched violently, sending the crew stumbling forward. Mitchell gripped the edge of her chair, her body thrown against the console. The lights flickered once more, then went out completely, plunging the room into pitch-black darkness. For a long moment, everything was still. Then the hum from outside returned, louder this time, almost deafening. "Steady!" Mitchell barked, trying to maintain control over the situation. "Stay focused, people. We've been through worse." But deep down, she knew this wasn't like anything they had ever faced. The ship wasn't just malfunctioning, it was being manipulated. It wasn't just being dragged toward the alien vessel, it was being consumed. A flash of light illuminated the room, so bright it almost blinded them. For a split second, the alien ship filled the viewport completely, a jagged mass of dark energy that radiated power. Then, just as quickly, the light vanished, leaving them in the crushing silence once more. "What just happened?" Rojas gasped, his hands shaking on the controls. The hum intensified. A voice deep and resonant echoed through the comm system, though it didn't sound like a voice at all. It was an unnatural, mechanical sound, like a being without form speaking, through a medium that couldn't comprehend its full weight. "You are part of this now." Mitchell's blood ran cold. They had been drawn in, no longer passive observers, but active participants in whatever this was. Grant stumbled back from the viewport, her face pale with fear. "It's inside our minds," she whispered. "It's controlling us." The voice came again, this time in their heads, not through the comms. "We control. You obey. There is no escape." "Stop it!" Mitchell screamed, slamming her hand against the console. "What do you want from us?" But the ship, if it could even be called that, did not answer. Instead, a wave of pressure crashed down on them, a feeling so intense it felt like their very thoughts were being squeezed out of their heads. Mitchell's breath quickened. They were no longer dealing with a ship or an alien race. They were being tested, broken down, manipulated. And it had all been part of the plan. They were just pawns in a game they couldn't possibly win. The object outside, the entity, it was watching them, studying them, and it would decide when they were no longer necessary. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The horizon trembled once again, the ship's hull groaning under the pressure of the alien ship's unseen influence. Commander Alana Mitchell gripped the edges of her console, struggling to maintain some semblance of control. The lights flickered sporadically, casting fleeting shadows across the dimly lit bridge. Her crew stood frozen, their faces pale with terror, each person processing the situation differently, but no one was immune to the growing sense of dread. It's not just manipulating our systems anymore, Lieutenant Markson muttered, his voice tinged with disbelief. It's inside our heads. It knows us. It's controlling us, making us do things. Mitchell's jaw clenched as the alien presence pressed against them like a crushing weight. She had heard the voice, deep, resonant, and overwhelming, filling the ship with its oppressive, unknowable power. They had tried to fight it, but now it was clear they weren't meant to escape. They were meant to be subjects of this alien force, trapped in a deadly game they didn't understand. It's not real, she whispered to herself. It can't be. She shook her head and tried to focus. There had to be something, anything they could do. They had fought through worse, hadn't they? She couldn't let fear take over now, not when her crew needed her most. But every attempt to break free only seemed to pull them further into the alien ship's orbit. The hum outside, the low, vibrating pulse, had grown stronger, reverberating through the horizon's metal frame. It wasn't just the ship now. It was the air they breathed, the thoughts in their heads, the very fabric of their reality. Mitchell's hands were shaking, her fingers slipping across the controls as she frantically rerouted power. But the ship wasn't responding. They were powerless, and the worst part, the voice was still there, whispering to them, urging them to accept the inevitable. "You will not resist," it said again, its words crawling into Mitchell's mind, its presence suffocating. "You will obey. This is the end of your existence. You are now part of something greater." "No," she breathed, her voice barely audible. "We are not your subjects." But even as she spoke, a part of her began to wonder. How much of this was really her own voice? "Commander," Markson's voice broke through her thoughts. He was pale, his face drawn with the horror of their situation. "We can't fight it. I don't know what it is, but it's too strong. Markson's voice faltered as the ship shuddered violently, throwing them all against their seats. A blinding flash of light filled the bridge, followed by a deafening roar that seemed to tear at the very air itself. When the light subsided, everything was silent. The crew was motionless, their faces frozen in stunned silence. It was as though time had stopped, everything hanging in the balance, and then they felt it, a shift in the air. The horizon was no longer stationary. It was being drawn toward the alien vessel with incredible speed. "Brace yourselves!" Mitchell shouted, but her words felt hollow, empty. She could barely hear herself over the pounding in her ears. The horizon lurched again, and the crew struggled to hold on as the gravitational pull grew stronger. The object outside was consuming them, drawing them into its core. "We're going to collide," Grant yelled, but there was nothing they could do. The collision was inevitable. They were mere objects in the hands of this unknown force. The ship's engines failed. All they had left was the sensation of being pulled toward something vast, something alive. And then the voice came again, louder than before, as though it had been waiting for them to understand. "You have been judged." Mitchell's vision blurred as the walls of the cockpit seemed to bend. The lights flickered once more, and the rumbling of the ship intensified as it was pulled ever closer to the alien force. Her heart raced as she gripped the edge of her chair, her mind struggling to keep hold of what was left of her sanity. "They're not going to stop us," she muttered, half to herself. "We have to fight. We have to—" But before she could finish, the ship was yanked forward violently, the viewport exploding in a flash of blinding light. Then there was nothing. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't.